Forced labor goods flood into the US under the de minimis category. China's influence campaign in the EU goes unnoticed, says EC advisor. Fujian officials forcibly demolished pig farm, and enraged farmer used a nail gun. Clasp moon in ninth heaven. China plans to land astronauts on moon before 2030.
Cheap clothes of dubious origin are crossing the U.S. border with little scrutiny under the de minimis category. According to the Wall Street Journal, existing laws do not require much attention on shipments under $800, which comes under the de minimis category. Under Section 321 of the Tariff Act of 1930, products of this kind are not subject to tariffs, and the procedure is much simpler. It is also not covered by the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, UFLPA, passed in 2021. It presumes that any shipment from Xinjiang province is problematic and won't pass the border until proven otherwise. Still, last year, Bloomberg discovered from laboratory testing that some garments from Fujian indeed originated from Xinjiang province. In addition, the journal noted that Chinese retailers such as Fujian and Temu have continued to send their items directly to American customers under the de minimis cover, considering that their overall value needs to be more significant to warrant closer scrutiny. Offers from other marketplaces like Amazon and eBay are troublesome, as they allow third-party sellers to send products directly from China to U.S. buyers. Jeff Ferry, an economist at the Coalition for the Prosperous America, estimated that the amount of low-value goods from China could be worth $188 billion in 2022. However, he said that the actual number might be even higher. For instance, Amazon doesn't disclose the total revenue from third-party products on its platform, only the commissions and fees it gets from third-party sellers. According to the journal, the U.S. received 685 million low-value packages last year. The exact percentage of those coming from China or Hong Kong is still being determined, but it was between 60 and 80% in the previous 4 years. Representative Earl Blumenauer from Oregon said he plans to introduce a new measure that would stop countries like Russia and China that don't have fair trade rules from sending low-value goods to the U.S. However, criticism has also been that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, needs to implement the UFLPA more effectively. As Axios reported in April, a bipartisan group of lawmakers complained that the CBP still accepted almost 300 shipments of goods from high-risk sectors with solid ties to Xinjiang and China's labor transfer programs despite the legislation. The lawmakers said, referring to the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region as XUAR, while we appreciate the difficulty and scope of enforcing UFLPA, we seek greater transparency about this review process and more clarity why goods stopped based on evidence of a link to the XUAR or labor transfer programs outside the XUAR are being cleared without congressional or public reporting. According to Ivana Karasova, a Czech academic who is advising the European Commission Vice President Vera Jourova, much of the EU is oblivious to China's aggressive influencing efforts. She spoke with Politico. In some countries, awareness of Chinese influence operations is high because they have a history of Russian-backed action. Elsewhere, it's complete denial. It's very uneven in terms of awareness. There are some countries where the discussions isn't even happening at all. Karaskova said such a situation persists even as Beijing has notably ramped up its efforts since 2019. She said the whole of Western Europe is not looking, and yet there are cases that are so blatant. She cited 2 commercial radio stations in the Czech Republic with many episodes that praised the Chinese Communist Party, with one outwardly saying Chinese President Xi Jinping was the best leader on the planet. And yet, when confronted by a report by Karaskova that exposed the Chinese propaganda, one executive still vehemently maintained that what they broadcasted was completely non-political topics. The European Commission plans to introduce a Defense of Democracy package to counter foreign interference. It includes a draft law requiring organizations in the EU to reveal their funding sources from foreign countries. But the intention is also facing criticism, with opponents arguing that autocrats could take advantage of the law to crack down on dissent and pro-democracy organizations. Karaskova has a different viewpoint. She said autocratic governments would deal with foreign funding irrespective of Europe's permission. She added that the EU has a rising problem with undercover influence operations. She said, "We have seen a mushrooming of NGOs and think tanks with Chinese funding." Karaskova said people should be free to access different sources, but also know who sponsored those perspectives. She stated, "Europe is really open. It is time not to close, but to shed light on where the financial flows are actually going and to which end."
China's rural management teams, known as Nangguan, have been notorious since their establishment. Recently, more than 60 rural management officers in Nanping City, Fujian province, forcibly demolished a farmer's pig farm with more than 200 pigs. In anger, the farmer used a nail gun to shoot them, injuring 2 rural management officers and a police station chief. This is considered one of the most tragic incidents since China's rural management enforced the law. Lu Guiyu, the pig farm owner, has raised pigs on this wasteland for several years. There are more than 200 pigs on his farm. On May 8th, when he arrived at the pig farm, rural management officers stopped him from entering. He was furious when seeing that his pig farm had been destroyed and the pigs had been driven to the mountains. He received no notice of demolition in advance nor any compensation. During a conflict with the officials, he used a nail gun to shoot randomly at the rural management team, injuring 2 rural management officers and a police station chief. He then took advantage of the chaos and fled. The police issued a notice offering a reward of $7,000 for anyone finding his whereabouts. 4 days later, he returned home, entrusted 200 pigs to his brother, and surrendered at the police station. According to NetEase, this incident is not the farmer's fault, but the law enforcement officers since they abused power. Some locals also revealed that Lu Guiyu has legal documents for this land, so it's illegal for the rural management to demolish his pig farm forcibly. Some Weibo netizens said the demolition of this pig farm was a mistake. A person who claimed to be Lu Guiyu's cousin said, "The town government originally planned to demolish another pig farm, but ended up tearing down my cousin's pig farm by mistake." This incident has attracted netizens' attention. Some people believe the farmer's behavior is legitimate self-defense, a resistance when rural management officers violate procedures, exceed power boundaries, and infringe on farmers' interests. Some netizens said, "Farmers work very hard. Give them a way to survive. Why would you destroy someone else's pig pen in the first place? You deserve it."
China announced on May 29th its plan to place astronauts on the moon by 2030 and expand its orbiting space station. As reported by AP News, the announcement came amid the race between China and the US to achieve new space milestones, indicating their competition for influence on global events. Last month, Chinese media CGTN cited comments by Wu Weiren, the chief designer of the Lunar Exploration Program, showing that a 2030 landing would be no problem. Quoting a Mao Zedong poem, Lin Xiqiang, the deputy director of China's manned space agency, said at a news conference on May 29th, "We can clasp the moon in the ninth heaven." Lin said the project would aim to enable short-term stays on the lunar surface, as well as collect samples and carry out research. The agency also introduced 3 astronauts who will head the nation's space station in a launch scheduled for May 30th morning. They'll replace a crew that's been on the orbiting station for 6 months. A manned lunar landing would mark a significant turning point in Chinese and global space exploration. Since the US Apollo flights in the 1960s and 70s, no humans have set foot on the moon. Additionally, it may represent a significant victory for China in its expanding space race with the US. Chinese President Xi Jinping has stated that his nation should develop into a great space power. With the goal year of 2025, NASA has also revealed a plan known as Artemis to send people back to the moon, including the first woman and first person of color. However, this program has faced delays. Space is increasingly seen as a new area of competition between China and the US. NASA's administrator, Bill Nelson, has said that the US should watch out for Chinese efforts to dominate the lunar surface and keep Americans out. China was previously excluded from the International Space Station, mainly due to American concerns regarding China's close ties to the PLA and its space programs.